I'm Rebecca Wynn with Devil's Digest here with publisher Hoder Bino, and we will be looking at this week's matchup, Utah versus ASU. Stanford and Washington were very similar. How does Utah compare to them, and what does ASU really need to be looking at in this game?
Well, I think that there are definitely a lot of similarities between Washington, Stanford, and Utah. A very strong front seven. They really have a very good run defense, pressure the quarterback a lot. Very assignment sound, good tacklers. So I think a lot of similarities between Stanford, Washington, and Utah. That can help with the game planning somewhat. Obviously, you can't have a carbon copy game plan from week to week to week, but I think a lot of the principles that you had to employ the last 2 weeks, you definitely need to employ against Utah. Again, their front seven is really going to be the key to go ahead and win the battle in the trenches. Make sure you have the running lanes for the running backs, and obviously protecting Taylor Kelly.
As you said, Utah's front seven is really good. What does that mean for ASU on both sides of the ball?
Well, I think when it comes to just protection for Taylor Kelly, to give him room to operate, not only as far as having a good pocket to throw, but also to go ahead and really employ the read option. It's obviously easier said than done when you look at the run defense for Utah, but that's something that really needs to go ahead and take place. We obviously know that the running game, again, because of the caliber of defenses ASU faced the last few weeks, has not been up to par, and that's something you just need to go ahead and really chip at the issue. Make sure that you're not going to be a one-dimensional offense. Even though I feel that the secondary of Utah is one area that the wide receivers can go in and exploit, but you just have to make sure that really you're balanced as much as possible. As we know, Stephon McCray is going to replace Christian Westerman on the offensive line. We talk about cohesion and chemistry being so crucial for the offensive line, so it's really going to be interesting to see if Stephon McCray can go ahead and really mesh with his teammates as quick as possible, be sound in pass protection, be sound in run block, and if he can go ahead and do that, Arizona State should be in a good place. But there's no question they have quite the challenge on their hands, and again, not a whole lot different than they had the last 2 weeks.
And Utah is one of the best running backs in the Pac-12 with Devontae Booker. How does ASU stop him and the rest of the offense?
Well, you really hope that the new defensive line that they have, with Demetrius Molatu averaging more than 300 pounds, which is really more than a lot of NFL teams, let alone college teams out there, you really hope that can go ahead and really put pressure on the offensive linemen for Utah, make hard for them to go ahead and hold their blocks, and give lanes for the linebackers to go ahead and really clog the running of Devontae Booker. Devontae Booker is not really a shifty runner. He runs north and south, but he does it very, very well. And obviously, the front five of Utah is really the key to that. So you just have to go ahead and make sure that you put as much pressure as possible on that offensive line. And really, Utah is not a whole lot different than what we saw last year against ASU. They really beat ASU for the most part in the trenches, both on offensive line and defensive line. So it's really imperative that both units for Arizona State can go ahead and answer the challenge. It is going to be quite a bit of challenge. The quarterback, Travis Wilson, on the one hand, has not thrown an interception yet, but on the other hand, has a very low completion percentage of 56.6%. And just today, the news came down that their best wide receiver, Trez Anderson, is gone for the year. So they're really going to be hurting on the passing game. And I think if the Arizona State offense can go ahead and get up to an early lead in the game and really force Utah to get away from their bread and butter, which is the running game, that can help the defense that much more. But I have no doubt in my mind that you'll see Arizona State really loading up in the box, really forcing Travis Wilson in the passing game to beat them. I think, at least on paper, that's probably the best game plan that Arizona State can have.
ASU special teams have improved week to week, but what will they have to do against this Utah team?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you talk about Utah, much improved in the running game, much improved on defense, and then look at the special teams: punting, kickoff return, punt return, #1 in the Pac-12. So it's good that the Arizona State special teams has really improved quite a bit the last 2-3 weeks, but they really have probably the biggest challenge when it comes to special teams this week against Utah. Now the thing is, I really feel that Matt Hawk and Alex Garbutt, both in punt and kickoffs, really did a great job in very weather adverse conditions in Seattle. So they really have a lot of confidence right now, a lot to build on against a very, very dangerous Utah team. And, again, you talk about Utah team that's very limited in the passing game, relies a lot on the running game. The last thing you want to do is to go ahead and give an offense like that a short field to operate with, because that really is more conducive to their skills, to their strengths on offense. So you really have to make sure that the field position is a battle that Arizona State is going to win. So just make sure you're doing really good with your directional kicks, really good with your hang time on punts, and you'll be fine. And again, I'm really encouraged with what I'm seeing from Arizona State the last few weeks, but I think all the coaches, all the players know that the challenge kicked up a few more notches this week.
What are your keys to the game and your final prediction?
Well, I think, again, on offense, Arizona State really tried to be as balanced as possible to go ahead and make sure that the running game at least can be somewhat of a threat for the Utah defense to go ahead and think about, and maybe going to open more of the play-action passing. And I really think Arizona State can exploit a lot in the passing game. And as I mentioned, the offensive line really has to go ahead and establish itself early, making sure that they can give as much run block protection as they can, but more importantly, really protect Taylor Kelly. I mean, there have been a lot of sacks and a lot of tackles for loss from both Stanford and Washington, and again, Utah is so similar in that sense that they can go ahead and pose the same exact problems. So the offensive line is probably going to have to play better than it did the last 2 weeks, because I think they're facing somewhat a more talented team in Utah. On defense, obviously, Devonta Booker, the running game, you have to go ahead and make sure that you stop that. Make sure that Travis Wilson, who's a very mobile quarterback, very deceiving for 6'7", make sure that he doesn't really hurt you with his feet. And also on the other end, their passing is probably going to be predicated a lot on play action, so that's something that Arizona State is going to have to be very cognizant, probably more cognizant than they were compared to Stanford and compared to Washington. I really think the running game that Utah is posing right now is probably just as good as USC and UCLA, and as we know, that was one area that really gave fits to Arizona State. So I really think that the front seven for Arizona State is really going to go on to step up. Again, we saw a lot of encouraging signs the last couple of weeks, but in all honesty, the challenge has really kicked up a few notches this weekend with Utah. So I'm predicting a final score of 27-17 Arizona State.
Great. And again, for Devil's Digest, I'm Rebecca Wynn.